famed psychologist and author of We Who Wrestle with God. Dr. Jordan Peterson joins me now.
Now, what do we have here? Dr. Jordan Peterson, one of my favorite guys that I love to hear speak. Some people disagree with him. Some agree, some disagree. I absolutely never disagree with anything he says typically. Not up to this point, man. So we're going to check it out. What else we have here is Krizz Kaliko, man. And on this channel, we do a little bit of comedy, a little bit of comedy, a little bit of music, and a little bit of trending topics. This is Krizz Kaliko on YouTube, man. Come on. Like, share, comment, and subscribe as we get into Dr. Jordan Peterson. There is a crisis of meaning, is what they say.
Dr. Peterson, we love this book. We love all of your books. This one, a little meatier than some of the ones I've been reading recently, but you've observed this cultural shift in this country throughout the world. People are struggling to find out, is it their identity, their mission, their meaning in life? What are you observing right now?
Well, I think you can attribute the fact of the culture war that's occurring everywhere in the West, very intensely in the United States, but also throughout Europe, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, to a confusion about the nature of the story that should orient us in the world. And the academics, the postmodern types, have put forward really the notion that life is about hedonistic pleasure or about power. And the problem with that is that both those stories are self-defeating. You don't want to be around anybody who's primarily motivated by power. And you don't want to be around anyone who's primarily motivated by their own pleasure-seeking self-interest. You need a
well, if you get, I'm not going to talk about my own experience, but if you have a boss, some people are really cool with their boss, but typically every job I've had, and I mean every job I've had, the boss is like this. They're what's called a megalomaniac, where they are consumed with power, especially if they never had it before. A lot of managers I've had, if they never had any power before, they are hard to get along with, hard to love, hard to be around, and I think that's what he's talking about here.
Pattern of orientation in the world to make you desirable, to make you able to have functional relationships in order to stabilize the future and to give your life meaning. And for better or worse, the story that the free countries of the world are founded on are the stories of the biblical library. And so we now know enough, I think, about human psychology to make a case for the validity of those stories in a manner that's compelling and also scientifically credible, and I've tried to do that in this book.
There's a lot of people out there not very attached to the Bible or to the Christian faith. Why is it so important to go back all of these years and listen to these stories? Why is it important for people to do that now, especially?
Well, it does appear to be the case that we see the world through a story. I would say that there's converging evidence from multiple lines of scientific inquiry that that's the case. In fact, a description of the structure through which we see the world is a story. The next question then is, in the face of widespread confusion about identity, that's what identity politics is, it's confusion about the story that orients us in the world, we have to look somewhere to ground ourselves. And the age-old historical traditions of mankind are the orientation poles that have guided us forever. And there's no reason to assume that we've superseded that, any more than we've actually superseded the necessity for stories. Everyone wants a great movie, a great novel. They want to be able to tell a great story about their own life. Like, the story is integral to being human, and there's a pattern of story that we need to know, and those patterns are encapsulated in our traditions. There's no getting away from that and still being human. We can deviate from it and degenerate into pathology, meaninglessness, but there's no getting away from the story. The question is, what's the right story? What's the correct story?
And you talk about...
Well, before you get into that, give me a pause real quick. Yeah, he's 100% right with the stories. History, I've heard it called his story. It kind of lets us know how things developed, you know, where we were, where we've been, so we know, you know, how things, they foretold in the Bible, like, you know, I don't know if you believe it or not, but it's been foretold that the days of today, if you think about even just disease of today, they talked about that. They said disease and pestilence. I don't remember what the heck pestilence is, But they talked about that happening in the last days. Although, according to the Bible, and I grew up in church and have been, learning Christianity my whole life, it says the last days. I feel like we've been living in the last days. I've been hearing that since the first days.
Cain and Abel, you talk about Adam and Eve in here. What locks people into meaning? Many people in America right now, their life has no meaning. It's just pleasure, watching TV, eating. Why is the desire for meaning so important, and how do you arrive there?
Well, there's two ways of thinking about that. We're arranged biologically and spiritually so that we find the deepest meaning in acting out the patterns that are most productive psychologically, socially, and in the long run. That's different than happiness. That's more akin to the sense of purpose and accomplishment that might flood over you, let's say, if you accomplish something difficult and worthwhile. That's a marker from the deepest recesses of your soul that you're on a path that's going to unite you with other people. It's going to stabilize you psychologically. It's going to make you a blessing to yourself. That's the terminology from the story of Abraham. It'll help you establish something of long-term, permanent significance. It'll make you a good father. It'll make you a good mother, a good husband, a good citizen, the sort of person that people want to be around voluntarily. All of that's associated with meaning, and that's associated in turn with, well, you might say voluntary responsible conduct. It's something like that. And that's the right basis for psychological stability and for community. It's not arbitrary. There's a pattern to it.
And you need...
I've actually always wanted to be a person to be liked. I'm not talking about because I was insecure. I've always been spoken about to be a likable person. So I can attest to this. I always wanted it to be that way. I thought it was a way, especially if I was going to be successful. I thought, man, that'd be great for people to really like you. And it just came natural because my mother taught me to be a good person. She grew up in the church. Of course, there's good and bad people everywhere, but she was taught by her mother and taught by the surroundings and the community that was alive back then. My mother's 83 years old. She was taught to be a good person. And then she taught me to be a good person too. And then I became somewhat of a celebrity, and being a good guy and being likable really worked in my favor. I think this is how you should be. If you are wrought with power and are hard to be around, it's actually going to make you sad and lonely at the end of the day. You may not be lonely now, but at the end of the day, you might die lonely. I'm going to keep it real with you. Let's go.
Have personal responsibility, personal accountability, and a little sacrifice. That's been missing in a lot of places these days.
Well, we haven't told a story of responsibility, really, especially to young people, not effectively for about 4 generations. And the consequence of that is a crisis of meaning. And it's so strange that the antidote to meaning of a crisis of meaning is, in fact, voluntary responsibility. And people know this because one of the things that, what would you say, is of great benefit to everyone is to understand that your efforts have been well received by the people that you're serving. That's something that you can comfort yourself on many a long and dark night, that you've actually been of some genuine utility to other people you love, maybe even people that are your enemies. If you were able to conduct yourself at the highest possible level of virtue. And
100%.
There's a very tight relationship between the voluntary acceptance of high levels of responsibility and the meaning that sustains you even when you're suffering. That's a wonderful thing to know. Why work hard? Why be of service to other people? Because it imbues your life with the significance that enables you to tolerate the difficulties of your existence and without bitterness and with hope. That's all associated with meaning. The stories of the Bible, they're about you, whether you know it or not. Obviously, who else would they be about?
Life is a story, and we're going to get back to those stories. We who wrestle with God, Dr. Jordan Peterson, thank you so much. Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.
Let me stop it. We Who Wrestle with God. That was the name of the book. Yeah. Again, he's never said anything that I felt like was wrong. I think that exactly what he says, it always has at least some validity. I've seen a couple of conversations about men and women, and of course there's going to be, I mean, everybody's entitled to their opinion, but come on, man. Should you not be a good person? Should you not? Should you not be a virtuous person? This, I'm going to tell you, man, I think that what the Bible was talking about, whether you believe it or not, was just a blueprint of how to live life. It talks about more abundantly. It's a blueprint of just how to do it. If you know you can have 1 million women, but if you do, I've had a lot of women all at one time. This was a problem. It's a problem. If you're a glutton, I've binged, and it makes me gain weight very quickly. Everything is said not to do that I did. If I did it, things didn't work out correctly. So I think being a virtuous person actually makes you more happy in the end. Guys, like, share, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what you think about this, man. I'll holler at you on the next one. Krizz Kaliko. Krizz Kaliko on YouTube. Cali, baby. See you. Bye.
Whose house? In your house.